Good. Now. Melt the clouds of sin and sadness and drive the dark cloud away. Giver of immortal gladness, fill us with the light of a cigarette. And she lit it like it was her last hope, and truth be told, it probably was. And we stood there, immersed in conversation, waiting for the bus to arrive at the station. She took one last toke of the smoke before we got onto the Greyhound, bound for Oklahoma City. I started to make my way to the back, but then she grabbed me by the back of my shirt and jerked me back and said, "Baby, I stopped sitting back there when they stopped making me. Well, why don't you go ahead and have a seat next to me, child?" So I smiled, took a seat next to this elderly woman who was half black and half senile, and she began to sing. She started to sing hymns for the glory of Him. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. I asked her how long she'd been singing. She began to contemplate. They didn't give me any real date. She just tells me how she grew up in the church listening to a father preaching. Her little brother, only 12 years old, gospel choir singing, and she was a sweet 16. She tells me how she was the most beautiful cocoa-colored queen with a tambourine anyone had ever seen. And when he snapped, clapped, and stomped, she was like a heavenly choir director who commanded the angels to sing. And she said, "I'd be lying to you if I told you that in my church we didn't rock out so hard we could make the good Lord Himself dance right out of His Chuck Taylors." And I asked her, "How do you know God wears Chuck Taylors?" She said, "Because, baby, to Jesus, we all stars. He was ahead of His time." And I asked her what church she goes to. Yo, she told me she stopped going to church when she was 16 years old. And before I could ask her why, she let me know. She told me she stopped going for the same reason that I think she's crazy. She said, "I guess because insanity is spiritual and vice versa." And when she said that, I looked into her eyes. It was like I took a journey into her mind. Her memories becoming mine, and I was taken back to that time in the past, 1963, Birmingham, Alabama, when I blasted stained glass into the air like sacred shrapnel that smashes the back of her head. The same blast leaving 4 innocent children on the ground dead, whose souls can outshine any blazing cross stuck in the Mississippi mud. These same four spirits could bind us together better than all the ropes that hung from Georgia pines and Oklahoma oaks and for the nooses that became the halos for rising angels. She said, "I got insanity, spiritual, and vice versa." But it's not enough for you to get crazy for Jesus, boy. You got to get crazy like Jesus. You got to wake up each day and when die and fight for what you believe and see. Going to church for us every Sunday morning and every Wednesday evening was like going into spiritual warfare. If you had to fight to protect our lives with the same lives we had to fight with, see, all across the South for Negro churches are being burned to the ground. And when they found out that we called our bodies the Lord's temple, they set us on fire too. So that's exactly what hate can drive people to do. People hating other people for doing nothing more than praying while black. That's how come every time I see church steeples, it takes me back to the times when I heard the screams of sons and daughters, the screams of mothers and fathers. I never once heard the screams of victims, child. These were the screams of martyrs. But she said none of that, y'all. Not a single word, but the funny thing is that is exactly what I heard as well as everyone else on the bus. And we heard her screaming for being buried beneath generations upon generations of absolute silence. And nothing more segregating us that day than the background noise coming from the rumbling of the Greyhound engine. And in an instant, I jumped from my vision as she said, "You want to know what church I go to?" I'll put it to you like this, child. I stopped going to church when I was 16 years old because the souls of my congregation are with me everywhere I go. And that's why I goes around singing and praying all day, every day. See, I stopped going to church for the same reason you think I'm crazy. And that's the same exact reason why everyone else calls me insane, but I just call me spiritual. Because the divine is my reality, baby, and the reality is a God thing. But it seems these days, people run away from God every single chance they get, but you can't run away from God. Because God is already there, just hoping and praying that you never lose hope in Him. I once was lost, but now I'm found. Was blind, exactly what she meant when she said insanity is spiritual and vice versa. I just hope that I'm crazy enough to never lose faith like this woman who everyone else calls insane, but I just call her my amazing grace.
There